What is up, disc golfers? Today on Iceberg TV, before we get into today's video, I want to give a quick shout out to the video sponsor. The video sponsor is bergsdiscsports.com. We are very quickly running out of Iceberg V3 disc golf backpacks. Use code ICE10 to get 10% off your order. And we're about to start our new Kickstarter for our next model. So once these are gone, you won't be able to get one for quite some time. So I would jump on that now, grab one while you can. Please like the video. Please subscribe. You're watching Iceberg TV and enjoy the video. What is up, disc golfers? Today on Iceberg TV, we are here with Paul Ulibarri. I let you guys know he was coming on the channel. I took a few fan questions. We're going to go over some of the nitty-gritty here. We got some tough questions here for Uli to answer, address a couple of things as far as, his career goes, the Disc Golf Pro Tour, injuries, things of that nature. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and welcome to the channel, Paul. How are you?
Thank you. Let me get my mic situated here so you guys can hear me good. But yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm stoked to do this this little interview with you.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. It was a few. We planned it. We had to reschedule, but we're here now, so I'm super excited. So the first thing we're gonna get started off with, I have fan questions from Jesse and Bud. This was the most upvoted question. It's, why are so many players on the Pro Tour getting injured right now? Is the Pro Tour too demanding, and what do you think they're going to do to help mitigate some of the injuries?
So sports are just, that's what's going to happen. You're going to get injured. Like, I don't think I know a sport where they don't play that often, and the ones that they do, when they play like once a week or something, like that's a contact sport, and more injuries happen in that than anything. So we're lucky that we don't have a contact sport, obviously, but I mean, you look at traditional golf as well, like nobody stays healthy through their whole careers, swinging a club all the time. Same goes for disc golf. I think it's just part of what you sign up for. And when they say more than usual, well, yeah, we're throwing harder and harder, and we're pushing the limits. I say a lot of these kids are pushing the limits of how far you can throw the thing, which means the courses are going to get bigger. And when all that stuff happens, the game changes. And, you look at like the best athletes on the planet as far as golf goes, a lot of those guys are pretty big. They stay fit. There's a few exceptions, and there's a few exceptions in disc golf as well.
Yeah.
But for the most part, that's what's going to have to change. Health and wellness for the athletes is going to have to change, the way that they take care of their bodies. And don't expect the courses to get smaller. I'll say that.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll touch on some of the health and wellness stuff later. I know you've had a long journey with your health and wellness, your longevity, the knee, the shoulders, elbows, all these things that disc golfers are hurting all the time. We'll touch back on that stuff later and how you're game planning and how you're working through that stuff, but we'll go back to that later. Thank you, Jesse, for the question. The last fan question is from Bud. What responsibilities do you have as the team captain? And aside from designing the captain's Raptor, what are you doing to make the team better?
So, great question. I get that question a lot as well. And, I feel like it's a pretty simple answer. Like, as the captain, you're a leader, and you got to, the way I always say it is I have to lead by example. So I put in the work, and hopefully people can see that and then obviously follow whatever that is. But other things that happen as well is, if something's going on with the team and I need to call somebody, then that's my duty to call them, whether it be bad, or maybe if a teammate is struggling or something, call them. I'm somebody that they can kind of get advice from. I've been around disc golf for now 17 years, 16 maybe as a pro. I don't even know the numbers. I started in 2005, turned pro in 2007. So it's been a long time. So when these kids come up on the team and they need help, like I'm a good guy to come to, because I kind of been through it,
Yeah, for sure. And as far as you being that guy that people want to come to, if I had to ask a disc golfer, you would be very high on that list if I had questions about the Pro Tour or advice on a difficult situation, because one of my favorite stories about you I heard on Brian Earhart's podcast, the doggy door scenario, going and sleeping, gambling to make the money at the casino, like that. I didn't know a lot about you till I listened to that, and that was very inspiring, because that was the grind of all grinds, and there's not a lot of people that have done that through disc golf. So that was when I really started to respect, more than you as just a player, but like, holy cow, like this guy's willing to do whatever it takes. So I feel like
Sure.
that's a good story that people don't necessarily talk about quite enough, because like going from where you were then to where you are now is like the ultimate come up. So I feel like you being the team captain, having been through all that stuff, is a good resource for all the the discraft players.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Follow up question to that: what's it like being the team captain to Paul Macbeth?
Oh, it's the easiest thing ever, man. You don't. He doesn't need any of my captaincy. I mean, just one of the greatest players ever, but just an awesome all-around dude. You know, there's never going to be a time where my captain duties need to go over towards that end of the spot.
Yeah.
And we're lucky to have somebody like that. And it's a group effort over there at Discraft. They're obviously I'm the team captain, but we have people that have been on tour forever. Paul Macbeth being one of them, Paige Pierce being one of them. I mean, these are great leaders in the sport, period. Brad Schick comes to mind, Michael Johansson, like a lot of good players, a lot of people who've been there a long time, and a lot of people who've done it the right way, grinded it out, work ethic first. And so it makes it really easy to captain a team like that when, your best players in the world are not only good at throwing a disc, but good in life in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. I'm sure that's an honor for you to be the captain to those guys as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're going to transition. I call this section, that was the fan questions. We have what I call the nitty gritty. These are 4 or 5 questions about some of the more difficult topics, addressing some of your shortcomings the last few years as a player, longevity, performance, these kinds of things. Where we're going to kick it off is your only win of the season was a C-tier event. Can you explain the current state of your game and what it felt like to go through the whole pro tour without capturing that win?
Yeah, I mean it's been almost a decade since I last won on the pro tour, or a national tour is the only tournament that I won. It was a Brant Hamrick, and that was in 2011, I believe. So it's been a long time. So it's nothing new to me, man. That's just how my seasons go. It seems like is I come close in a few of them, and then I'm just waiting for that moment for it to actually happen. Now, this last season was different than a lot because injuries plagued me. Tried to fight through it like I always have, made it worse. I'm at the point now where I'm back to feeling pretty healthy. But, I mean, this season was an absolute grind. A lot of time spent out there on and off the course. And I feel like it was the first season where I had a little bit of what would you say, probably a little burnt out, because when all that stuff kind of pressures you and falls on your back. I mean, I think before this season I only missed cash at 8 tournaments ever or something, and then I missed 7 straight, or 7 out of 8 tournaments on the pro tour. That's something I didn't think I'd ever have a problem with, So when that happened, living in that moment, I mean, that was terrible. And I learned a lot from it. I left the tour. I kind of focused on getting a little bit healthier. I know when I went and I got checked out by a few doctors and stuff, we ended up diagnosing my shoulder with thoracic outlet syndrome, which is like this crazy thing that happens where you can't like feel your fingers and stuff. And so that plus severe tendonitis, take you through the process of what I was going through is I'd go practice, I'd go play one time, okay, which was my practice round with Jomez. That would be the only round that I played in the week so I could rest my shoulder. I'd start the tournament, I'd throw a couple shots, some good, some bad, and then all of a sudden I couldn't feel my fingers. Like I couldn't feel things. And so then my disc, like I would throw thinking I was doing the right stuff, and the same disc would go left, and the next throw, it would go right. Same exact disc, stable or not. So sometimes I would have the pop and it would do what it was supposed to do, but most of the time it was just, I had no control over that. So I went home and I rehabbed it. I did a lot of work on that. But also going through that tough time, 7 out of 8 tournaments missing cash is like if you were to told me that last year, I would have laughed at you and been like, "All right, I'll bet you my house that won't ever happen to me." But it did, and it it was tough mentally, man, too. Very tough mentally. But I'm the type of player where even though that stuff is like hard, I don't ever make excuses for myself. And instead of just sitting there moping around, I knew I had to rehab the shoulder. I couldn't play, but I also wanted to work on my mental game. So I got in touch with like one of the biggest sports psychologists on the planet, Bob Rotella, who's big in the golf scene, one of the best and most well respected sports psychologists in traditional golf. He's wrote like Golf is Not a Game of Perfect. And I wrote him a big email, man, and I was like, "Hey man, I probably can't afford you because he's pretty expensive, but I'm like, if you take me and you work with me, like I promise it'll be worth it," type thing. Like I laid it all out there. I was like, "I want to be in one of your books someday. I want to be a success story. Like, is there any way you can do this?" And I ended up getting in touch with his wife. His wife messaged me back and she's like, "Hey, read your email, well written. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna show it to him. He's not working with people right now. I don't think he was retired, but he only works with specific people, obviously." He read the email, and then I got a text from him saying, "Hey, what are your dates for this time? Can you make it?" And of course, I was like, "Yeah, I don't care
Mhm.
when the date is, I'll make it." And so I actually flew out to Virginia and I stayed at his house for 3 days and we just worked on my mental stuff. And then I realized like I felt like a very strong mental game. It's the worst of my game at that point in time. It was an absolute nightmare. Going into that, I thought, all right, I'm going to tell him what's going on. And he's going to tell me, well, you need to practice harder. You need to do all those things. It was the exact opposite. Like he spoke directly to me as an athlete. And after that, I went on a nice streak. I rehabbed the shoulder, mental was good, and I played very well at the end of the season. So that was like what it was like this year. Not winning a pro tour, I mean, that just comes, man. We play against great players all the time. I've had a lot of close calls, and I expect I'll probably have a bunch more. But I definitely want to sneak a couple wins in there for sure.
For sure. And sort of a follow up question. This is kind of a personal question, but it has to do with the sports psychology. What sort of things were you guys addressing? Was it fear of re injury? Was it insecurities about your game? Is it fear of failure? The pressure of winning a major? What were you specifically addressing? And you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, because I understand it's a personal question. But what exactly did you guys address, and how much do you think that's going to help you coming into this season?
No, I can answer that honestly. I thought it was going to be a lot of stuff, exactly what you're saying, but it ended up being so simple and so easy. I went in there and I was expecting him to tell me when I told him how much I practiced because of my injury and what I was doing, that he was going to tell me like, "Well, get your priorities straight. Like, go practice every single day, go throw up a bunch of putts, all this stuff." But what it ended up being is guilt towards myself that I had of not doing those things. And he told me, he said, "Well, how long did you practice before the last couple of years?" And I'm like, "Man, I played like 40 tournaments a year, for like a decade. Like I played harder than anybody. I practiced harder than anybody. Disc golf, as far as playing, was my life. That's all I did. Field work, putting, tournament, field work, putting, tournament. There was no in between for me." And he told me, he's like, "Okay, so then if you went to the course right now, could you throw any shot?" And I'm like, he's like, "If I gave you 10 shots, could you throw any shot?" And I'm like, "Yeah, probably." He's like, "Could you shoot 18 under if you got 10 shots?" And I was like, "Yeah, probably." He's like, "Can you birdie every hole? Do you think you can do that?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "So then stop feeling guilty about yourself. Get your mental stuff." He used some harsher words. "Get your mental game, you know what I mean? Get your confidence back," type thing. And this went back, I've always been pretty confident as far as my game goes. And something really struck me. One of the reasons I went to Bob is I was at a tournament and I wasn't playing good. And Paige Pierce came in the room and she was talking to me and somebody else. And she guys, you guys ready to win the tournament? And I was like, yeah, right. I just came off of 7 missed cashes in a row. She sent me a text later being like, hey, Yuli, you've never talked like that before. Like, stop doing that type thing. And it made me reflect to be like, oh my gosh, like I can't do this anymore. My mental is definitely in shambles. So going to him was part because Paige Pierce gave me a little wake up call, like, hey, you're not being yourself. Don't talk like that. That's not how we talk, type thing. Again, back to those guys being great leaders. So he told me, quit feeling guilty about it. Like, you don't have to go practice every single day in order to be good. You just have to stay in the moment, think about your shots, and not get ahead. And he's like, I want you to play a game. Next tournament you play, I want you to see where your mental goes, if you're staying just right there in that moment, or if it goes ahead or behind or anything. And I'm like, all right, that'll be easy. Dude, it was the toughest round of golf I've ever played. My mental game was so bad, I was all over the place. And so this game that I was playing, I ended up playing it for the rest of the season just to take little tabs on where I was. And what it did is it helped me center myself and be like, oh, this thought process is so bad. And it obviously I'm not perfect at it, but I got so much better. And I feel like mentally I'm back to, where I'm capable of playing my best golf.
Yeah, you got your swagger back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, I'm happy we actually got to talk about that. Sports psychology is so important, and everyone focuses so much on the physical work that they don't actually focus on the mental work and the mental health. The Disc Golf Pro Tour is such a grind. I feel like that mental aspect can fall to the wayside because people are just dragging themselves to the finish line. So I'm glad you're able to sort of speak on behalf of that because it is extremely important. So a follow-up question to that is, why do the majors matter so much to you when you have, you're making the money, you're the captain of the team, you're the face, one of the premier faces of Jomez Pro, which is one of the biggest honors in the game. They're the biggest channel. Why does the major matter so much to you? And what will you still feel like a failure if you finish your career and you don't win a major?
So majors are the hardest tournaments, right? That's the top of the top. My whole thing with majors are, I don't have anything left to do. I got nothing left to prove to anybody. I want a major for myself. As far as anything else goes, like, I've done it. I've won an Elite Series. I haven't won 12, but I set goals on early on in my career, and I've met every goal that I set when I first started the game, except for that one. So in a way, I'm happy that I haven't really done it because I don't know where I'll go after that. I don't know if I'll chase more. That's the last one for me. The ultimate goal is I want to be a Hall of Famer. That's my ultimate goal. But that goes beyond me. I want to do that for everybody else. I want to do that for my father's name, for my kids to have my last name and be able to look up and be like, wow, he was one of the best. Like, that's for them. But as far as me personally, selfishly, yeah, chasing majors. And I've done this for, it's been 7-8 years where that's been my only focus. And I've made some deep runs at majors. And it just wasn't my time, and I believe I'll make more deep runs at majors. I really do. So will I feel like a failure? Absolutely not. When I'm done, my goal is, when you see my Yuli emblem, I don't even want you to think about me. Like, I want people to think about my foundation or my institute or things that I left behind and left good for the game. You know what I mean? Like, it's not about me at that point. Like, that's how big I want my brand to get, is to where then people don't even know who's behind it. Those are my sort of goals. It's not for self-recognition. That is a selfish reason. I want to win a major for myself because of the work that I put in, not for anybody else, for me.
Good. That's what it's all about. It's always got to be, it's on you, man, and that's the best way to look at it. And so I definitely appreciate that outlook. So Now you have so many things on your plate between, now you're doing more YouTube, you've got Jomez, you've got Team Captain, you've got Pro Tour. You kind of already touched on this. You basically got one practice round with Jomez, and that was it because of the injuries. Do you feel like that was an ample use of your time? Because that's such a silly time messing around with Big Germ. That's not a true practice round. I mean, it's such good content, and the fans love it. You're fulfilling that obligation to the fans before the obligation to yourself when it comes to winning. Are you going to spread yourself thin like this next season, or what's the game plan to make sure you're staying fully dialed in?
So first of all, the good thing about playing forever is I've played all these courses a billion times. So the holes change. I need to get those changes in. But when I'm practicing with Germ, man, I want to beat him. That's not a fake thing. Like, I'm trying to throw my best, and sure, I'm giggly, but if anybody has ever played a practice round with me, period, I'm not nose to the grindstone, like, leave me alone type thing. Like, that's just who I am. Like, nothing changes. You can film it or you don't film it. That's the way Germ and I are literally going to act. Playing all the courses before, I don't have to practice anymore. Those courses, what I'm looking for when I practice isn't to throw a perfect shot on every hole for me. What I'm looking for is just distances. That's all I'm looking for. Like, I can throw a shot, it can be 50 feet off, but I know my game so well that I can be like, okay, that's 50 feet off. I already know what I have to do in the tournament, and I can make that correction. So the practice rounds isn't that bad. Now, not being able to play and get reps in, period, that's tough. And then not being able to feel your fingers, you kind of need those bad boys in order to play disc golf. So that was tough. But as far as spreading myself too thin, I feel like I'll take on more projects. Why not? Like, hey, Bob told me that I'm need to quit feeling guilty about that stuff, and that's exactly what I'm going to do, man. I'm going to go out there, and when they call 2 minutes, I'm going to be focused. I'm going to stay in the moment, and I'm going to do well. I know that.
Good, yeah. Continue, do whatever you want to do. Double down on yourself, and what you're doing is working for you, your brand, your mental health. So yeah, that makes sense. I definitely like the answer to that question. Just a follow up to that, people have sort of described you as someone who's kind of takes on all these things just for the financial gain, taking on the Jomez, taking on all these side projects. A lot of people see it as financially driven, and that you'll sort of, as long as there's money involved, you'll take on those projects.
Right.
Where do you stand on that, and what's your game plan to sort of make sure people understand your intention this year?
No, my game plan is I want to build my brand as big as possible. Now, the money that comes with that, great, that's awesome. But as far as, I've heard whispers of people saying that, like, making my foundation was just so I had a tax write-off or something like that. I don't even know how to do that, first of all. So I promise you I'm not making that much money to where I need a tax write-off. Now, if I get a tax write-off and it helps, great. But that's not how I'm driven in any way. For example, like, I give lessons around here, and my lessons are very expensive. They're $400 an hour, and I get booked up quite often. And people tell me, like, oh, I see comments of people being like, oh, it looks like his lessons must have run out if I'm doing something or whatever. Or like, that's like me just trying to get extra money. Now, listen, every dollar that I've made thus far has been donated directly to my foundation. I haven't seen one penny of any lesson money that I've given since my foundation has started. So you can throw that out the window. And then people kind of associate, I felt like, when I was doing the bit of trying to get sponsorships on Jomez. Here's the funny thing. I actually got responses from a lot of those people, and I didn't take one of them. So when I would do those bits with Jomez, people were like, oh, he's always trying to get a sponsor. He's always trying to do this or that. Listen, I got responses from those people, and I turned them down because that is not why I did that in any way. Now, if Nike or Coca-Cola or somebody offered me a big contract, and that would have been sweet. But that was just for the fans because they liked it. I did it one time just messing around, and they're like, oh, that's awesome. Kind of like the little Ulibarri safari that I do. And that's hilarious too, because people a lot of people think like I'm literally stupid. because when I do those bits, they're wrong. And they don't understand, like, no, they're wrong on purpose. Like, I mess like 1 to 2 to 3 things in there up literally on purpose. And it's like an inside joke with the Jomez crew. You know what I mean? But it's so funny to see the comments on there of like, oh, Paul, it was this. And then we take like bets on what answer, when are people going to correct me or whatever. So a lot of the stuff that I do is to just be funny and to give the fans what they want and be myself. And that is me. That's me being goofy. As far as financial gain, listen, I make good money being the team captain of Discraft. They help me out big time. I don't need $400 an hour here, $400 an hour there, extra sponsorship here. My sponsorships that I have are very tight knit. Like I have Bushnell, who we've been partners for a long time. Ledgestone, partners for a long time. Discraft, Zuka, this is going on our 2nd year. Like I only try to get sponsors with the highest brand that I possibly can in the sport, so that matches like what I'm trying to do. Like I'm trying to build. One of the things is people ask me why I never won a major and blah, 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 blah. I take it on myself to show people, hey, listen, there's a path where you can make a good living in disc golf and you don't have to win every tournament. I feel like that's part of my calling as a player, is to prove that, because there's not a lot of people who have done it. That's one of the things that I want to be proud of at the end, is pave the path for the next generation. Now, what that's going to take is extreme hard work, longevity, work your butt off, period. End of story. You can do that. You brand yourself in the correct way, be a professional. I mean, that's like one of my goals, is to be able to be as successful as Paul McBeth, as successful as Ricky Wysocki, and be able to look around and say, yeah, and I never won a tournament. Like, I want that. That's something that I want until I win one, and then we can switch the narrative. But
so just a reflection on that. What's your game plan now that everything's sort of rehabbed up, everything's taken care of? What's the nutrition plan? What's the exercise regimen? You know, being in amazing shape's going to make you a better player, and that's just a proven fact. The more in shape you are, the more athletic you are, the more longevity you'll have, the less likely you're going to have an injury. Are we going to see you in the gym, Planet Fitness with Ezra, getting swole? What's the game plan to stay with that longevity and stay ahead of the health and wellness issues you've had in the past?
I've always been pretty good about staying healthy, honestly. When I get injured, it's tough to do the workouts and like get into the gym. It's almost depressing in a way. And so that's on me for not keeping up with my physical health as much as I should have in the past, for sure. But I mean, I've had years on tour where, I mean, I almost guarantee I was the best in shape by far. Like one year, I didn't eat a carb, I didn't have caffeine, I didn't have any sugar, nothing, for a full year straight. And I worked out every single day. Hey, guess what? 2 years later, I drank anything that I wanted, I ate whatever I wanted, and I had nearly the same year. And so that was like one of those moments where I'm like, okay, maybe a happy medium. You know what I mean? Maybe there's a happy medium here, instead of like giving up all happiness to play good disc golf and then, you know, being in the worst shape of my life and being like, I just don't give a care type thing. There's got to be a medium, and that's what I'm focusing on. I have a great team around me. I have a personal trainer here who helps me out. I have a physical trainer who is keeping my shoulder under wraps, and I'm excited to play next year, man. And I do feel healthy. For the first time in a long time, I feel pretty healthy. I need to lose some of these holiday LBs, but the family makes some good cooking.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, you're supposed to gain at least 5 pounds during the holidays, so that doesn't matter. That's fine. That's whatever. All right, everybody, that's it for the nitty-gritty section. The last thing I have is one last fun question for Uli. If you had to play one course the rest of your life, which course would it be?
Oh, tough question. I think I would have to say Yarva, but it's just such a long walk. It's a big course. I'm trying to think of a fun one. You know what? What is that course in Oregon? gosh, I love that course. Pier Park, great 54 hole or 54 par course. I love that place. I'd play there every day, I think.
I've never played there, but I'm sure if you're saying that it's lovely, I'll have to look it up. So
awesome.
that's all we have for Uli for today. Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on the channel, man. It's good. I hope people gain a lot of value from this and gain some unique perspective on what you've been up to this off season.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me. And hey, guys, make sure you like and subscribe on his channel.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. Enjoy your evening. All right.